How you doing, everybody? Nick DiVirgilio here, and I have a very special guest in studio with me today, Mr. John Good from DW. Nice to have you here.
Nick, it's a pleasure. You know, it's always great coming back here. I really love this experience.
Fantastic. How many times have you been to Sweetwater? Do you think do you remember how many times offhand?
Getting older, so we probably don't remember all the times. But the first time I came here was with Billy Ward, and we came in, and it was like a really snowy day.
Mm-hmm.
And
they have those here in India.
They have them, and we were just I was in from Southern California, right. And I wasn't feeling good, and something was up. Anyway, we get in, and it's 7:30 in the morning, and I just had this headache like you wouldn't believe. It was a monster headache. And Billy sits down, he goes, "Well, here's what we do. We're here to play drums, right?" And man, he plays so loud. And I thought, you know what, these people won't like me. I'll never get in the club, and that was so many years ago. Anyway, long story short, this is one of my favorite places to come to because of the spirit, the soul of what goes on. Chuck and everybody here puts on the Gear Fest, which is in a couple weeks.
Coming up soon, yeah.
And instead of just being frightened by having to explain what I do, in drums and what have you, it's a challenge and a nice thing that because we're well accepted here, and I feel I've got a tremendous partnership here in Sweetwater.
Well, I think you definitely do have that. So for people that follow drums, of course you know who DW is. You might even know John Good's story, but we have a huge base of people that follow us on YouTube and on the website. They might not know who DW is or the DW story. So can we go back a little bit and just kind of give a quick overview of how you got started with this company?
I'll do a quick 44 years of my life.
If you could do it quickly, yeah, exactly.
Well, it started off, I was looking for a place to learn how to play drums a little bit better. And there was these Yellow Pages in Santa Monica, and saw this really tiny print, Drum Workshop. So it sounded like a friendly place to go. Right. And I met Don Lombardi, and I showed up, and I was like a horrible drummer. Am a horrible drummer. And, for 3 months he tried, he says, no, you're doing it all wrong. Let's put the stick here and do it this way, get all these fingers working and all this stuff. And I said, great, man. He says, now here's a rubber pad. Go away for a week and come back. On a pad? I want to play rock and roll. What's this pad thing? So I'd come back another week later and just terrible habits of, stiff. And he says, no, we're going to do it this way. But this went on for 3 months. Okay. 3 months later, and my partner Don, he's one of the greatest guys in the world. But he's not one of those real touchy-feely kind of guys like this, But one day he did put his hand on my shoulder, and we were looking off into the abyss. And he said, I've had all these very successful people that I've taught. He and Freddie Gruber, they were like partners.
Okay.
And he says, touring people, Broadway, television, all kinds of stuff, recording. And I'm afraid you're not going to be one of those guys. And instead of going, I'm destroyed now, I just went, you know what? He says, you do have a talent, because all we do is talk about drums, how they're constructed, sound, etc. So that's where we started working together. And, we had this little 400 square foot place in Santa Monica, right. And now it's a nail salon. It's kind of cute to see that. And, for a period of time, we did whatever it took. I slept on the floor sometimes there, and we didn't have much money. And, but we did have a passion for what we thought we could do. And when I say it that way, I mean, nobody has the grand picture. I mean,
it was all new, right?
I mean, Chuck made all this happen, right? But he started in that Volkswagen van. Right. Well, he started with a Volkswagen van and 400 square feet. And I swear we had no idea that we'd be able to continue or that our audience of people would even care. Right. But we started to cater to drummers and their needs. And that was the main thing that Don Lombardi really taught me. He says, listen to these drummers. Listen to what they need. Don't listen to what necessarily the industry is telling you is necessary. And that's, I think, where we got off on the right foot.
Sure.
And from there, we just didn't look back. You know, I mean, it's gone by quickly. Like I said, it's been, our 45th anniversary is coming up.
It's amazing.
And I got a surprise for that one, boy, do I ever. Anyway, and what I found out was that all these years later, there was a quiet audience doing this because there wasn't a lot of catering to the musician as much as there was catering to what the industry should be.
Right.
And when we started to do that, I mean, I went on the road for a number of years. Don would hold down the fort, so to speak.
Right.
And his son, Chris Lombardi, was a youngster, and now he's one of the most clever businessmen I know, and he's our CEO.
Right.
And here's Don Lombardi and myself are kind of like Bartles and James, you know, and not so much in the background,
Right.
but we've come all this way, and it's been a journey that I'm proud of.
It should be.
And the people and the players, the audience, the fact that we're even talking right now on social media, I never dreamt about those things,
Right.
you know, and it's a great way to reach people and have not just your message of who you are or who the heck you think you are,
Right.
but what you do and the unique qualities about those things.
That's a great story. You guys, DW was really innovative with a lot of products that were firsts in the 80s. And you guys kind of the first double pedal, really?
Pretty much.
Right.
I mean, a clever guy named Schlesman in Australia, you know, championed that. It was a great big piece of gear.
Right, but you guys refined it and honed it in.
Yep.
The remote hi-hat, obviously the seat, the trap case, which is kind of what got it started, right?
That was my first thing I worked on.
And the 5000 series pedal, which kind of just changed the landscape of pedals.
You know, it's funny because that was a Camco pedal, and I don't know if many of you remember Camco. A really fine, in my opinion, company from years back, and it actually started with George Way and these tremendous innovators that I feel like, you know, a part of our DNA, Don and myself and my company, comes from all that because we lived it, we breathed it, you know, we were such a part of it. And that pedal is a funny quick story. It was a 5000 Camco pedal. And I always thought, because once again, wasn't a great drummer, but every time I hit the doggone thing, the bass drum sounded like it had this like snap to it. Little did I know that was the footboard hitting the toe wing screw
right.
on the bottom. So we eventually fixed that, you know, and we went through all these variations of what the pedal should be. We got into the chain drive thing. You know, there was a guy, Frank Eppolito, in New York, and they used to take the cam casting off and throw it away, and this guy named Al Duffy, who became the plant manager for Pearl, but he worked on timpanis, and he'd just sit there and he'd look at these sprockets and chain and look at these pedals, and one day he just married them together. And for all of you who may know or don't know, chain drive pedals, how many hundreds of thousands of millions of them are out there now?
Yeah.
And that guy, Al Duffy, God rest his soul, brilliant man. He championed that whole idea, and you know, we said, look, we're going to take this thing to the next level, and he says, well, I want to do it with you, cool. And therefore it took off from there, and we were truly a hardware company for the longest time.
Right.
And Don, you know, he said, look, you got this affinity for making drums, and I understand it, and it was really something I wanted to do and Don really wanted to do. We started off making paper, wound paper drums. And this beautiful man, Remo Belli, God bless his soul, he came and he said, you know what, I'm going to do that. It's going to be called Acousticon. And so Don said, well, let's forget that paper drum idea. Let's do what you want to do. And so I started making maple drums, and man, oh man, did we go places from there.
Yeah.
And hopefully everyone's enjoyed what we've done.
That's a good transition, I think, to bring us into your knowledge of wood, your adventures in finding wood, and how you make your drums. Obviously, it's not just maple, it's all kinds of different wood configurations. You travel the world over to find exotic woods. So how did you start learning about wood? I mean, and about the properties and how they go together in drum making?
Once again, thank you. Kind of like practical knowledge of certain things.
Okay.
When I started making drums, I mean, because I just decided, you know what, I want things done a certain way, and I know I'm a tough customer for that, and I was antagonizing a company that made my shells for me, over and over and over again, and they finally got tired of me. So I talked to Don, and I said, Don, we got to invest in this, and he was totally for it, which took our company to another place. And we all like pretty woods. I mean, we all like seeing these things, but I had these guys that I happened to meet. One of them was a guy named Ken Wilcox, who says, why do you want to make a drum shell? And he looked at me like, are you crazy? Do you know how hard that is? Is there a manual to tell you how to make a round cylinder of plywood? No. Is there anyone to tell you what kind of pressure you need to make that? No. Is there anybody who can tell you what glue to use? No. How about the heat involved? Geez, I never thought about that. So all these things fell into place where I said, I'm going to go find the machines. And so in finding the machines, they were really for bent chair backs and things like that. Okay. Not a lot of cylindrical things. But I found this manufacturer who has actually made some drum heaters in Taiwan. And I started asking questions of these guys who became my mentors, and a special individual named Don Sadler, who, is the guy that selects every one of my logs for me. Anyway, he was this guy who said, John, I've got this beautiful curly maple, and I'm making drum shells, right? And it's all about grain orientation, which I didn't understand enough about at the time. But every time I made a curly maple drum, which is, curly maple's got this vertical figure in it, okay, right? But the grain runs this way. The drum pitch, the timbre, was low. Not just once, not just an occasional drum, they all were that way. So, scratching a noggin, I said, there's got to be something in that vertical thing, right? So, being able to make our own plywood, being able to make our own shells and all that stuff, I said, let's turn the grain that way. Oh my God, my life changed. Yeah. My life changed. And then, of course, if any of you know me, I'm a bit of a knucklehead. Then I had to go this way. Then I had to go that way. And then I got a few other things we're working on right now. But it's just so much fun to know how grain orientation changes the pitch of a drum shell. And for the longest time, guitar players had this gorgeous wood to play. They did hold it, right, play it. Drummers had plumbing to pound on. Black or white drums, red sparkle.
Right, once in a while.
Every now and then. So I started to really investigate where these woods come from, how to get them, and how far you got to go to get them.
And you've been some far places to get your logs.
Been some far places, and Esther, my wife, Esther and I just came back from Europe not long ago. And man, there are some woods that now that I've been doing this for a number of years, I was chasing this one log for almost 10 years. Let's call it 8 years. And I'd heard about it, and it was a Paduc. It was a Paduc Pommelet. And as soon as I got to this one place where I buy certain things, they said, "Oh yeah, we had that. How'd you hear about it?" "Well, you know, Sadler told me, or Wilcox told me, or some of these guys who are just absolute family to me, but they guide me through these things. Go find that log." Well, they'd sold it. They sold it to this other place. Well, 2 years later, I go there. "Oh, we just let go of that log." You know, it was because it's like a crazy, weird pattern. I like the weird things, right? Because drummers like to be like, you know, blown away by certain looks.
Sure.
Lo and behold, last year, I find it. By virtue of them going, "Look what we've got." And I went, I've been looking for that. And it was just this one-of-a-kind, once-in-a-lifetime find. And, you know, I've got some kits left of that thing. I think it was about 4,000 square feet or something like that.
Right.
But, you know, I started making these drums, and, you know, violins just take off like race cars when you see this stuff. Just put clear lacquer on it, and it's a moonscape. It's a beautiful Mars landing. It's whatever you want it to be,
Sure.
and it's so pretty to look at. There's some people, you know, you have a grand piano in your living room? Put something like that in there.
Of course, yeah.
And it's just like, what a great compliment to the wood itself and the quest to find it. And so Esther and I are always on the road trying to find the next one.
That's amazing. That's a great story. How does that couple over into your metal drums? You guys make metal snares and all kinds of different concrete snares, all kinds of different stuff. What's the biggest difference in the construction? I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of difference, but I mean, do you have to totally change your thinking when you're making a metal drum as compared to your wood products?
Well, when you're making concrete, yeah. I mean, the
But
way
I mean, the edges and all that kind of stuff. What's the mentality there?
But there's a lot of the similarities, you know. Okay. But like, for example, let's get back to concrete. There's a guy who's another mentor kind of person in Southgate, Los Angeles area. And he makes, you know, my edge snare?
Yeah.
You ever played one of those?
Yeah, I did a video on it not too long ago.
And it's like a heavy, heavy ring. Well, he got to thinking one day, and he cut a part of a Zildjian cymbal out and put it in his like metal analyzing machinery.
Right.
And up popped the secret recipe.
Okay.
So he said, "You know what? I can mix that." And he made a shell for me. Then he took it upon himself to make this other thing. So I get these two shells, and one said Zildjian on the side, and the other one said cobalt. I said, cobalt? The Zildjian one, I put it together. I'm a drum maker. That's what I do. And we played this drum, the Zildjian one, and it's just like rang and rang and rang, and it was like gorgeous, and like you could play salsa, you could throw down a dog bark in the center of the thing, you know, but it's stuff that you do. And it was gorgeous. So the other one, all it did was one shot, nice thick rim shot, but man, it went off like a rifle. Everyone fell in love with this cobalt drum. So I eat at the Olive Garden 5 days a week. Anyway, in Oxnard, if you're looking for me, that's where I'll be. Anyway, to good friends of mine, they get me in and out of there, and this is where I have my lunch. Anyway, so he met me there, and we're sitting, and I said, "Tell me about this Zildjian thing." He says, "Well, you know, it's how I made it, and it's X amount of dollars." And I went, "Okay, like that, great. Tell me about the cobalt, because everyone wants to know about the cobalt." And he says, "Well, you see that Zildjian one rings like this. It does what a cymbal does. You know, you can't see it with your naked eye, but it's ringing. The metal's doing this. And that's where you get all those overtones. With this cobalt, it's static. I mean, you could hold a gun to this drum shell and it's not going anywhere. It's just static material." I said, "Great, how much?" And he goes, "Well, in quantities of 100 shells, between $1,500 and $1,800 your cost." I went, let me do the math here. That's going to be a
Like a
$5,000+ snare. Nobody's going to buy that. And I was angry and pounding on the table, and my waitress came over and said, chill out. So they're like family to me.
Of course.
Anyway, so I said, doggone it, what other material would replicate what that does? And without missing a beat, he said, cement. I said, cement. So that's how the concrete snare came about. And we use a pulverized stone with a polymer binder, so I don't have to put rebar in the doggone thing. And that's one of the loudest, coolest snares.
It's a great snare.
Keltner loves that snare, you know.
I've done a video on that one here.
Have you?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's good.
Great.
I just wanted to hear that story because it's neat to hear how the difference between making a wood drum and other material, and how you guys are always kind of striving to up your game with whatever the material is when you make drums. So
I didn't know it would be concrete, but
it's
there
great.
we are.
It's all really great stuff. So before we close off this video, let's talk about this drum we have in between us, because this is a new product for DW.
Yeah.
Again, you found some great wood. I never even knew this wood existed, and it's gorgeous. This is Purple Heart wood from Central South America. Tell us about this drum.
Well, there was somebody walking through the factory who found this drum shell that somebody made, and I should give kudos to whoever it was, and I don't know who it was. Maybe it was a stave drum, but it was Purple Heart. And they said, John, listen to this thing. So I walked across the street to where the other brands that we happen to be involved with now. And they handed me a stick, and being a bad drummer I hit the perfect rim shot. And I swear the windows were going to bust. I went, I want that. And, they said, well, a lot of singers probably won't take it, but it does crack, and it pops really in a nice range. So I went back and I started to research where Purple Heart comes from. And lo and behold, I got in touch with a company that I was turned on to many years ago by Don Sadler and Ken Wilcox, these guys who have guided me in my journey through the wood world, right? And they said, sure, we have that. So next thing I know, this great big load of Purple Heart comes. And these trees are gorgeous and grand, and they get quite old. And when they're cut, when it's their time, when you cut it, it's purple inside. It's just hence the name.
This is the natural color of the wood. This is
the natural color.
That's not a stain or anything.
No, not at all. And the cool thing about it is, most woods, if you leave them out in the atmosphere or sunshine or what have you, have a tendency to oxidize and turn brownish. This one is brownish until you expose it to light. And then it just, or when you sand it, when you irritate it or whatever you're doing to it, it gets purple. In light like this, really purple. And so when you get that, you want to capture that.
Sure.
When you seal that in. So I got this veneer. And, I've got these two 8-year-old granddaughters, and they're adorable. And they were over for dinner, and I brought them both a little square of Purple Heart veneer. And they said, and they call me Appa, because when they were really little, they couldn't pronounce Grandpa. So, and they're just fantastic. Anyway, they said, Appa, can we have this? I said, yeah, here's a piece of Purple Heart for the two of you. Girls like purple and all that. So they took it home. About a week later, they came for Sunday dinner. And they're at the house. And I walked in, I said, girls, you still have that Purple Heart? And they went, oh yeah, Appa, we love that. It's in our room. I said, well, Appa's going to make some snare drums out of this. And they said, are you really? Are you going to put a little heart on the side of them? And I went, as a matter of fact, I am. And that's where the heart right there came from. And you played this drum.
I can attest that it's a fantastic
It was 7:30 this morning, and that woke me up.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's one of my new favorites.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful drum, and it's a great story about how you found the wood and and how your
Yeah.
granddaughter's gave you the
Put their
inspiration to
little
put the
mark
heart
on
on.
it.
So it's really cool.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank you very much for this interview and coming and talking to me today, and our folks out there that watch these videos. DW makes fantastic products. I definitely encourage you to check out all of their stuff. We have a great selection here at Sweetwater.
You do.
We have so much DW gear here. It's really cool. So, John, thank you so much for hanging out with me today and allowing me to do this interview with you.
And thanks for playing drums this morning. It was fantastic.
Appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everybody.